Our guest tonight is Adam Davis. Adam, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Well, I grew up in Ohio. I've been in a couple other places, but not for very long at all, just kind of visits type thing. But ever since I was a kid, I was taught how to hunt and track by my grandpa and my one uncle, and I pretty much know the normal stuff that's out there, the deer, the stuff that you would hunt, and, and everything. I'm 40 years old now, going on 41. I've lived in the Cincinnati and Dayton area pretty much all my life, between the two. I'm not exactly sure what else you want me to say on this part.
Oh, no, that's more than good enough right there to help us get a feel for you. What made you get into this dogman research? What sparked your fascination with the subject?
Well, initially when I knew what I was dealing with, it was a report that I had heard through the Dayton Daily News. Then when the Montgomery County Sheriff had said something about not going and looking for the source of these howls, the report that I heard, that I've seen in the Dayton Daily News, was out of Liberty, Ohio, which is just a couple miles outside of the western side of Dayton. I looked it up on the Dayton Daily News website and heard the recording of it. And shortly after, my girlfriend at the time and I were both listening to Coast to Coast AM, and we both heard this interview with the truck driver. I can't remember his name. Scott, I think it was, that had an encounter out there right around Liberty. And at the time, I was still living in Dayton. And I was like, wait a minute, is this the same thing that I just read about? And she was like, Liberty, that's right over here. So we, both kind of got a little bit concerned and interested in it. That's when I kind of started my research in earnest on it. What surprised me the most was the recording that I had heard initially. The 3 or 4 real loud howls, one right after the other. And then if I remember correctly, they played the same recording on Coast to Coast that night, and she heard that, and she said that her hair stood up on the back of her neck because she remembered hearing those kind of howls around where she was at.
You mentioned the howls. This will make a good segue into a part of the show where we can focus on that. You said some time back your mom heard some strange sounding howls. What happened there?
Yeah, it was winter of 2000. She heard this one real loud piercing howl from back in the woods. And this is in Dayton where she heard this, because the house where I'm at has about 100 acres of woods that are part of the township behind the house, and there's other woods that are fairly close to the house and everything, but not connected to these woods. So we're used to deer coming in and out all the time and everything. I mean, there's a small herd that kind of stays back in there. She said that she was letting the dogs in, and all of a sudden she just hears this really loud howl, but it, come from the woods. And she's like, what the is that? It was kind of one of those things where, for all lack of better explanation, it scared the living you-know-what out of her. Later on, I played that recording that was from the Dayton Daily News for her, and the look on her face and the fact that she paled before me said it all, although she said, yeah, that's it. Which, kind of surprised me, being that this was in an urban area, and she had heard those howls, or heard that howl, I should say, about 5 years before, back in 2000.
I'm surprised when she heard those howls, you didn't hear about that instantly.
Well, sometimes my mom is a little bit closed-lipped about things like this. Generally, she's not. She'll usually tell me about things that are unusual that happen around here pretty quickly. But this, I don't know if maybe it just kind of had her awestruck or what, but it genuinely, I could tell that it genuinely frightened her when she talked to me about it later on after I told her about the howls out there in Liberty. And it didn't connect for me until later on. And I'm going to say this might be a good segue for what I had happening out here back in 2000 initially, and I didn't know what it was. Well, my friend and I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, that would be a good segue. Tell us all about that. Is that the time when you heard the howls from multiple directions?
No, that was when my friend and I were out in the backyard, and we were out there practicing because I used to teach martial arts. We heard something inside the edge of the woods, and we were both standing there listening and watching, and it was, something stomping back and forth through the underbrush. Every so often, we were catching glimpses of red eyes looking at us through the dense underbrush. We went back there the next day and looked, and we were expecting to find, something else because of an experience I'd had just previous to that. What we found were big dog-like prints, but we didn't think at that time that it was anything beyond what we were looking for initially. Now, in hindsight, I know what this was because of the experiences I've had since 2000. The eyes were above our head level, and we both stood 6'2". It's level ground from our yard into the woods. We could definitely tell that it wasn't just up on something, and it was, at least 7.5 foot tall, because it was a full head higher than us.
Was this daytime when you were out there and you saw the red eyes in the woods, or was it kind of dusky, darkish?
It was pretty much nighttime. I mean, there was only the light from the porch light behind us. The light was not bright enough to really project out into the woods enough to illuminate anything with eyes that would be like you would expect an animal to have reflective eyes. These seemed self-illuminated.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, instead of looking at a reflector, it was like looking at, say, a flashlight with a red filter over it, almost.
Ooh, that's not good.
Yeah.
Before we move on with the show, I want to make sure we cover the howls that you've heard personally. You mentioned hearing the footsteps in the woods there, but you've had some incidents where you actually heard some sounds on your own. Please tell us about those.
Well, this was at the house out on Diamond Mill, which is no longer there anymore. I was laying in bed, and we had the door open with just the screen door open in the upstairs bedroom because there was a balcony out there. I started hearing howls from these things. I got up as quick as I could and grabbed my recorder and stepped out there on the porch and turned it on. Well, first I heard one howl from, if I had to guess, maybe about a little better than half a mile away. Then I heard other howls coming from my right and the sort of back behind me over on the other side of the house. It was like they were communicating between each other. And then the dogs in the area started barking. I don't know if you've ever heard of a dog bark when it was scared, but it was that kind of bark. Because there was dogs in the area that was, several dogs through the area that were starting to bark in sort of that defensive manner, like they were trying to ward off and tell everybody hey, something's out here, help. That's the best way that I can explain, that if you've ever heard a dog bark like that, when it's scared and it's trying to alert everybody to come help, that's the type of barking that I was hearing. I've heard, other incidences where I've heard coyotes, out there, and the dogs really didn't respond to the coyotes, but the coyotes would shut up when these things started howling, and you wouldn't hear from the coyotes for a good 2 or 3 weeks after that. It was like they would just move out of the area. It's just kind of crazy when you think about that, for the fact that you've got a pack of wild animals that are scared out of the area by something that's evidently a bigger predator, because generally coyotes don't move off for anybody unless you're shooting at them.
That is a scary thought. There was another incident where you heard a sound, but it wasn't on the ground with you, apparently.
Yeah, that was the incident back in early 2000, around May of 2000. I was in the backyard here at the house in Dayton. Again, it's against the woods here. And I was just closing up the shed, and all of a sudden I hear this horrendous shriek. I mean, for the lack of a better description of it, it sounded like the sound of air brakes being slammed on, glass breaking, a woman screaming at the top of her lungs, and machinery being ground to a halt type. It was just like that all at once. To me, it was like that if you stuck that into an air horn and blew it at me from about 5 feet away. That's how loud it sounded to me. Scared the bejabbers out of me. I wanted to unlock the shed and dive in real fast at that point, and just, kind of hide type thing. And I'm not one who is scared easily. But I don't know what that thing was, but it scared the liver, what out of me. But it sounded like it was it sounded like it was treetop level at that point. And the trees out here are about 40, 50 feet tall. So, I mean, it's a fairly old growth area of the forest. Whatever it was, I don't want to come face to face with it. I don't know if it was one of these things or if it was something else. But it was just the one time that I heard that god-awful shriek. So I'm not sure if it was a dog man that, I don't know where the heck it would come up with that kind of noise, considering my experience with the sounds that I've heard them make before. But I imagine just about anything's possible, because we don't know much about these things yet.
You said you were doing things out there by the shed. I take it was daytime and not night.
Yeah, it was broad daylight. It was like just a little bit afternoon, and I was putting up the lawnmower, and you heard this horrendous shriek.
That's weird stuff right there. Yeah, that would be enough to shake anyone up, to say the least. In 2005, you had an actual eyes-on encounter. Please tell us about what happened that night.
Not to sound cliche, but we were coming from the Pine House, and we decided to start taking a little bit of a look on the way back towards my apartment, driving through the areas where we'd been going through to see if we could come across anything. We had one window cracked, and we were going slow in a couple areas where we knew we had heard howls and stuff before. I had 3 friends in the car. My girlfriend wasn't with us at the time, but it was my friend Mike, his wife, and my former friend Tony. We were all looking around as we were going, just in case we did have to catch sight of something. We were on Germantown Liberty Road. It does a little zigzag at one point. As I was coming around the bend of one of the zigzags, I saw something sitting in the ditch right beside a juniper tree that was there. I slowed down. He got a good look at it. We all saw this thing sitting on its haunches like a big freaking dog. We got up even with it to where the passenger side window was, where you could look straight out the window and see it, and its head was almost dead center of that window. Now, mind you, we're in a Grand Voyager van. So it was a 98 Grand Voyager, so that gives you an idea of how high we were off the ground. And where it was sitting was a good foot below, maybe a foot and a half below the level of the road. And it was, like I said, squatting on its haunches. Just as we passed it, it got up, and I caught it between the taillights of my van and the fact that it was a full moon. This thing was a full head, maybe head and shoulders taller than my van, and it took 2 strides across the roadway, and it wasn't running. It was just casual, 1, 2, and gone into the field on the other side. I got a real good look at the profile of this thing. It wasn't plantigrade like a Bigfoot, or like you would expect somebody in a werewolf suit to be walking or running. In other words, it was the hind legs were digigrade like a dog's, and it definitely had a tail. I got a good look at the outline of its paws, its forepaws, and they weren't paw-like. They were more like a raccoon, or, maybe, they weren't primate-like because you could see the claws, and they didn't look particularly like they had a defined thumb, but if you've ever looked at a raccoon's front paws, they are very hand-like, so they can manipulate stuff and grab stuff. But from the way that I could see, I couldn't really tell if it had a fully opposable thumb or not. This thing was huge. Something on the order of a minimum of 450 pounds, if I had to guess.
That is pretty big. When it was down in that ditch sitting, did it look identical to what you would expect to see from a massive dog, except it would be on a bigger scale than any dog that you would ever see? Or did it just have canine-like features? It was massive, but it didn't have the same conformation that a massive dog would have.
Well, the head was very dog-like, like a wolf or a husky, but it was shaggier. It was like, imagine if you took a husky and gave it more tufts of fur and a little bit of tuft of fur off of the ears instead of being, as smooth-edged as a husky's ears are. But this thing had a huge upper body. We're talking like almost, maybe not as muscular, but almost in proportion to what you would, okay, if you look at a dog head on at its body, its shoulders slope right off with the neck. It's like they're almost the same width as, or just a little bit wider than the head and neck. This was like a linebacker. It was like you put a dog's head onto the refrigerator Perry's body type thing. As it was going behind the vehicle, it was a really deep-chested thing, and you could really see the bulk of the upper body, and then you could see how lean it was towards the waist. It wasn't ill-proportioned, because the muscles on I could see the bulk of the muscles in the upper legs of this thing, but it was still proportioned like a really robust dog would be, where the stomach is a lot leaner after it gets past the rib cage. But what would be the forelegs of a dog were a lot more pronounced and a lot more arm-like. And it swung its arms like a human would. Like I said, the thing was 7.5, almost 8 feet tall. we went out there the next day, and we were looking for tracks and everything, and the grass was too heavy to really find anything track-wise. But we tried to emulate how it went across that road in 2 steps. Like I said, my one friend and I, we're both 6'2", and there was just no way possible that even trying to do giant steps that we could make it across that in 2 steps. It was like straining to make it from the ditch to halfway into the middle of the first lane of the road, let alone, to the middle of the road and then across into the other side of the road where the other field was. It was just impossible. I don't even see how somebody with some sort of rigged stilts could do that with any kind of nimbleness or ease the way this thing did. It was just like it had been doing this every day of its life, just doot, gone.
While all this was going on, you were moving too fast, I'm sure, to have a chance of picking up any smells, but did you ever hear any sounds?
No, this was dead silent that night. The only thing that really, stood out majorly was the eyes. I mean, it was, the funny thing was, is these were, on this one, they weren't, at least from what I saw, they weren't red. It was like they were more yellow. I'm not sure what that indicates or what, but it was more of a, with these, it was, I would almost say it was the way the moonlight was hitting them, and maybe the fact that it wasn't looking directly at us or something, but we didn't hear any sound coming from it. Now, after we got past that area, we heard, other howls and everything, but we were, like I said, we were a good mile and a half from that area at that point, by the time that we started hearing other howls and everything. So we didn't hear anything directly from that particular individual creature. That's what scares me, the fact that it wasn't a bit afraid of us. It was like, okay, there's a car coming. I'll sit here, wait, and you're passing me by. It's like, okay. Just how unafraid and casual it seemed. It was like somebody waiting for the bus. I don't know if you've ever had a deer run in front of you, or you've had, you ever experienced, like when a dog or something gets loose on the highway or something like that. The poor thing is freaked out 9 times out of 10. This thing was like, it was being perfectly calm, and intelligent. It was just waiting for me to pass, make sure that I didn't hit it almost. At least that's what it seemed like to me, like a human would, stop in the ditch and not try to dart in front of a moving vehicle type thing.
Yeah, but when you're that big and have weapons like that, I can't see why you would worry about people going by on the road next to you. I guess that's pretty much expected in that case. One night just outside of Liberty, Ohio, you and your girlfriend had a bad case of the heebie-jeebies. Tell us about that.
Which time? There's been several times. I mean, there was the most prominent one would be out there at the house where I'd gone upstairs maybe an hour before to meditate and everything. It was in the middle of summer, so we had the windows open and everything. It was a fairly cool night, relatively. I came down, and she had been on the computer. She didn't want to disturb me, but she was smelling that smell that these things had. We had, at that point, become familiar with the stench these things have, which is like, if I had to describe the stench, it's like a combination of, if you've left a refrigerator or a freezer full of meat unplugged for about 2 weeks, and you open that up and then you throw a a dog that's never had a bath in its life and it's wet in your face. It would probably be enough to gag a coroner, somebody who's used to the smell of dead bodies and that type of thing. But I was talking to her as I was coming down the stairs, and it was like, don't you smell that? And I was like, yeah, I've been smelling it for almost the whole time you've been up there meditating. I'm like, these things must be close. And I had just come around the corner into the kitchen where the computer and everything was. Just about the time that I said that, my view came around to the window that was facing the back of the house, towards the cornfield. And I saw something bright red. And I kind of shook my head and looked again and ducked my head down to get a better look through the open part of the window. And when I did that double take, I clearly saw two bright red eyes looking at me from the cornfield. My legs literally buckled under me because it was just like, holy you-know-what. It's just like, yeah. Matter of fact, I think I made that kind of noise. She looked at me like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Like, that. And I pointed out the window. I couldn't see him anymore. I sat down on the nearest chair because I was just that shaken. She didn't see him. I took about 20, 30 seconds to gather my courage, and I, grabbed one of my swords that I kept in the house and everything. I mean, I know that might sound a little funny. Why didn't you grab a gun? Well, I make swords. And I went outside, and, I heard what sounded like two of these things. I don't know if, how many people have ever really heard the sounds that wolves make when they're kind of yapping and playing back and forth with each other, those little snarls and snips and cackles like they make. But it was like that between two of them that were going south through the cornfield away from where they were at. To give you an idea how close this was, I measured it off the next day that it was 50 yards from the back of the house to the edge of the cornfield. Now, this was in August, and the corn was about as tall as it's going to get. And I went back down there the next day, the place where I initially saw the eyes over the top of the windowsill, and looked out. I realized at that point that where I saw the eyes, they were like about 8 feet off the ground. The corn was taller than I could reach, and I could reach 8 feet. I can touch an 8-foot ceiling. The corn was about 9 foot tall. It was full grown, and it was like it just came to the edge of the yard and was waiting for somebody to see it. Or rather, they were. But like I said, I only saw one set of eyes, but apparently from what I heard, there was at least two in there. It was like the way they were walking away, the sounds they were making, it was like they thought it was freaking funny. They scared the living you-know-what out of me.
Yeah, they do seem to enjoy that for whatever sick reason. But then again, why do they do half of the things that they do? You mentioned that you and your girlfriend smelled that scent before you saw the eyes out there at the edge of the corn. I know you did quite a bit of research looking for dogmen with that girlfriend. What was it like having a girlfriend out there with you doing that? I mean, a lot of guys would give their left arm to have a girlfriend out there into dogman research, beating the bush with them.
Well, there were times that she wished that she wasn't along. There was, for the most part, it was kind of nice for the fact that she was experiencing the same things I was experiencing most of the time at the same time when we were going out actively looking. There were times that she was seeing things on her own when she was going to and from the store or to and from a friend's house and I was staying at the house. She would tell me things that she was seeing or, experiencing. at different points in time. There's been more than once that she told me that she would be going past certain little hangout areas that we figured out where they liked to hang out and everything, and she would see pairs of eyes from the woods, and this was before the actual experience of what I saw in the cornfield that night, from the edge of the cornfield when I was coming down from upstairs. Again, they weren't all like the bright red eyes. Some of them were like orangish stuff too. So, again, I'm not sure if that indicates whether they're male or female that they're seeing. I mean, just to draw a comparison, I don't know how many people listening have ever looked at box turtles, the tortoises that you find in the woods and stuff. The males have red eyes and the females have brown eyes. That's how you tell them apart without actually trying to probe their little cloacas. But that's the easy way to tell the sexes of box turtles apart. So, like I said, I'm not sure if the ones that we've been seeing with red eyes are males and the ones that don't have red eyes are females or what. But for there to be as many as we've come across, it's definitely more than one. But back on to some of the experiences we had, there was one night that we decided to go down to the road where that farm is and everything, and where they fenced off the area and all that. In the van that I had at the time, this was a different van from the 98 Grand Voyager. It was actually a 93, and this one had a manual transmission, so that made things interesting sometimes. And it was especially interesting this one night. I hate to be laughing on this, but it was actually kind of funny from one aspect because of the fact she was flipping out. It was me, her, and her niece in the car, van. We were going down through there slow. We had the windows down just enough to where we could hear things. We heard a howl fairly close. Just about the time that we heard that howl, I hit a real soft patch of gravel, because this is a gravel road. It lost traction, and I tried to, tried to correct it and, get it out of there, but I couldn't. So I had to try to back it in, back it out and everything else. And that was actually really well stuck. You're like, oh, for sake, get this thing out of here. Because we could kind of, you were really getting that, oh crap, feeling for the fact that we knew that if we're stuck there, we're in deep, what. At the same time, I don't know if other people get this feeling or not, but you could feel these things trying to encroach. We heard like stuff in the brush on the one side of the van moving through. We were hoping it was deer. It took me about 30 seconds to get it out of that real soft patch of gravel, but we tore out of there, and we heard another howl about the time that I tore out of there real close to the van. So I guess you could say that would be our close call. But I've heard things hit the van before. It wasn't that night. I've had things thrown at the van from these areas that we had more or less figured out that they like to hang out at. I don't know how many other people have had things thrown by these things. I've heard of Bigfoot and stuff throwing rocks and doing wood knocks and stuff like that. But these, I don't know if anybody's ever had it, but there was one night where she and I were together. We were going to to where I'm at, which is my mom and stepdad's place. And we were going from her place, over there, and it was on Dayton Liberty Road. Sorry, Dayton Farmersville Road, rather. Something hit the wheel well, then bounced underneath the vehicle. I didn't really think anything of it at that point. It was like late fall, very, just starting to go into winter. And I thought, well, maybe it was like a horse chestnut or something that fell off of the tree late or something, or, a stick or something that I didn't see in the road or something like that. That same night, when we were coming back from my mom's place, on the same side of the road, but on the opposite side of the van, obviously, because we were coming back up the road, something hit the inside of the wheel well real hard, and I heard it bounce off the tire and then out of the wheel well. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's the same place that happened earlier, and that sounded like it really hit hard. So it was pretty evident that it was actually thrown. Then there was another time a couple of years later that I was alone in the van, in the other van that I got stuck in the gravel. This was on West Carrollton Farmersville Road, which is about 2 miles from Dayton Farmersville Road. The 2 miles south, just if anybody's looking on Google Maps. I was passing this one patch of woods. It was like maybe about an acre and a half, but it was in a low-lying area where there was a fairly deep ditch and everything. I heard like a thump against the side of the van, and all of a sudden I heard my tire lose pressure. And I'm like, wait a minute. Because all of a sudden it was not just a low hiss, it was gone type thing. And I was on the rim of my tire within about 5 seconds. That's how hard, whatever it was, it hit my van's tire. I'm sitting there on the side of the road, and I'm like, okay, this was on purpose, because the tire was in perfect condition. So I go ahead and slam it back into first gear, because I was clipping along pretty good. I was doing probably 45 miles an hour when this happened. So whatever they threw at it, they had good aim. I said, I'm not sitting here and waiting on something to try to tear the door off and pull me out. Like I said, I put it back down in first gear, and I rode that rim the other mile and a half up to the house. I didn't care about the rim of the tire at that point, because, like I said, I wasn't waiting around to see what threw it. And I could feel something staring at me when I was sitting there. I got the heck out of Dodge. It was pretty obvious at that time when my tire blew that I knew what they were trying to do that night a couple years prior. So,
one thing about all this, Adam, that just doesn't make sense to me, if you think about those big claws/talons on the ends of their fingertips, it wouldn't necessarily make it easy to throw things, because to throw an object like a rock, you have to be able to close that hand at least to a certain degree to control it, to keep it from leaving your hand before you want it to. Do you think it was a dog man and somehow they can throw objects, or what?
well, this is speaking from a couple different things. Number one, that night that I saw that one in the profile of the moonlight in my rearview mirror, I couldn't fully tell if it had a thumb or not. If you look at somebody who, for example, has long fingernails, like a woman who has really long fingernails, if it's like, for example, a flat rock, like I said, let me just kind of give you a little quick background on this. I used to teach martial arts, and Shuriken Jitsu, which is, how to throwing spikes and throwing stars, was one of my specialties. There are numerous ways that you can grip a blade in which you wouldn't have to close your hand around it. You could put it between your fingers, you could grip it between the thumb and the side of the forefinger or whatever. So even if these things didn't have thumbs, if they could get something between two of their digits and then, sling it, it's just a pinch grip is what it would be. That's the only thing I could think of that would be able to cut a tire like that. Would be like a piece of rock or a large piece of glass or something that would be flat and would have edges and points. Whether it was naturally just broken like that or if it was literally worked like you would an arrowhead or something. But like I said, it wouldn't necessarily have to worry about claws or something like that getting in the way. When I was teaching and everything, I taught people to be able to put 4 different throwing stars between all their fingers and their thumb and forefinger, and they'd be able to throw them one at a time in rapid succession. So, like I said, it's not that far-fetched, in my opinion, that these things would be able to take a flat rock, or even take, like, you know, using like if you've ever watched a baseball pitcher take a larger rock, take a baseball, and how they put their 2 fingers over it and grip it with their thumb, and the other 2 fingers are curled up for, like, doing a curveball. I can imagine that kind of grip. Even if you were to take your own thumb and not even use it and just put it over to the side and put something in your palm that's big enough to cup, you could take it and throw it pretty solidly. And considering the musculature that I saw on the one that I saw, it could very easily throw something pretty hefty. I could very easily see something thrown with a good amount of force in excess of like 5 pounds at somebody. Very easily. I'm not sure how big some of the rocks are that people have experienced Bigfoot throwing them, you know, at them or at their houses or whatever. But a baseball-sized rock, easy. You know, that'd be easy picking. Let alone something like a piece of shale or a piece of limestone that naturally fractures along its own layers. That'd be real easy.
Those are all really good points. That does make sense how they could throw a rock like that, so yeah, I could see it now that you bring that up. On another note, one of the most disturbing things that you came across in your research over the years of these things involved a bloody sweater and I think a shirt along the side of the road right there by that area where the farm is. The farm where you said the fence was put up, I believe, and also the controlled area signs went up. What was so disturbing about that sweater and maybe even the shirt that I think you said you found?
Well, it was actually a full set of clothes. It was a pair of pants with a red sweater and a matching red T-shirt. And please pardon me if if I kind of, because when I think about this, I think the fact that give me a second here. It's something that really hits me because a lot of people think these things are just imagination or fantasy, and they don't think that these things are out here and that they are potentially dangerous. And I think about what I found, well, what my girlfriend and I found that day, and the fact that they were shredded. I could just it was, again, this is going to sound almost kind of cliche, but it was almost like finding something out of a horror movie. The pants themselves, I mean, I guess you'd say that on cursory examination, I looked at the labels on the stuff to see if they were all the same size. And they were all women's clothing. And they were all in the same, they apparently were all from the same person because they were all matching size. And it was for a petite-sized woman. And there was a pair of black cargo-type pants, or cargo style, and the pants themselves were shredded from, a little bit in some places up as far as like mid-thigh down to the ankles. And it wasn't like a constant shred, but it was like several places were shredded, like it had been gripped at like 2 or 3, 4 times and just torn. And they were matted with blood, and there were maggots on it, so it was at least a day old. Well, maybe not quite a day old, because the blood wasn't fully dried or anything. And the shirt and sweater I found in very close proximity to each other. And the first thing that stood out, because I hadn't picked up the shirt yet, was the fact that the stomach area of the sweater was partially unraveled. And then I looked at the shirt, and the shirt was, had a gaping hole torn in it. If I had to guess, it would be like at the bottom of the rib cage area. If it would have been on somebody at that point in time. And it was not a clean rip. It was like there were, a couple smaller tear holes along the edge, like it hit it and then it did it again and then ripped it out. And the shirt was pretty well matted with blood too. And sorry, give me a minute.
Take your time.
My girlfriend and I called the cops, and we told them what we had found, and they dismissed it, saying, "Oh, well, people dump stuff out there on Arnold Road all the time, it's nothing." And we looked around when they said that, and we didn't see a single, garbage bag or pile of garbage anywhere within sight of where we found these. Now, we decided to go back the next day because we didn't have anything to pick these clothes up in. And we took a garbage bag with us. We were going to try to preserve evidence, and these clothes were gone. We found that really odd. I mean, we thought maybe if they had been, that maybe an animal or something might have dragged them a little way to try to lap the blood off of them or something. But these were just gone. They hadn't been moved anywhere from, they hadn't been moved down the road by what you'd expect a coyote or something to do or whatever. They were just gone. At that point, we just kind of looked at each other and it's the cops know about this. Somebody knows about this. They disposed of it. My mind went back to the order of the Montgomery County Sheriff to not go looking for these things. That they made on TV that was a one-time thing. we didn't even hear anything else about it on the news after that, as far as the order not to go looking for them. And I actually, when your listeners probably don't know this, but I was on Monster Quest a few years back on their final episode that they put out, and they asked me about this. This came up, I should say, and they never aired this.
You know, Adam, you are doing a good service by sharing this. I know it wasn't easy for you to talk about it, but you really are helping people, whether you realize it or not, by putting this information out there. And I want to thank you for that.
Going into the areas where we've pretty well figured that these things are at, which they seem to follow waterways for the most part, creeks, rivers, that sort of thing, at least in my observation and also in my research as to how long they may have been here, because it goes back to colonial times and everything in Ohio, as far as encounters with these things being reported. Going into areas, like I said, where these things are at, is kind of like knowingly going into an area where there's a rogue bear or a rogue mountain lion that's been known to kill people. It's just kind of like, oh, well, it's not going to hurt me, and then you're up next on the menu. Take that times, say, if I had to venture a guess on numbers, maybe 20 or 30. Because there's been times that my ex-girlfriend and I have gone from northern, Montgomery County and Preble County up towards Brookville, and all the way down to south of Germantown. And we've come across sign, whether it's that stench or, finding, tracks and stuff like that. And we've done this in the course of, 2 days. It's unlikely that one animal or creature, whatever you want to call it, would be over a range of roughly 40 miles in that amount of time. Also, the fact that the recording that I made and the other times that we've heard numerous howls coming from different directions, that points immediately to there being more than one. There was also photographic evidence that I've had of different sets of tracks in the snow where they were going after deer. That was a really uncomfortable night because the tracks that we got were fresh. And I mean, there was I'm going to send you a picture. Among the pictures I'm sending you, there is a track that's on the edge of the road where there's still liquid water in the track from where it had just stepped off of the road.
Ooh.
And you can see how big the track is because I laid a ruler beside it. It had stood there long enough for the snow to melt under its paw, and it was, like I said, it was still liquid on the road. It hadn't had a chance to refreeze. You'll be able to see the difference in the tracks between these things and the deer. If I had to judge the stride just from the ones I saw in the snow, we're talking about 6 or 7 foot stride.
That's pretty big.
Yeah, and you could see where the deer were struggling through the snow, trying to get away from them. I couldn't see where there was any blood, from deer, but that could have been further out past where the range of my flash could reach because I was taking it with my cell phone. So these things are eaten, and like I said, what's to say we're not on the menu, especially after those clothes that we found.
Like I said before, you've taken a toll on yourself by putting this information out there, Adam. I really do appreciate the fact that you did that. It's so easy, like I said before, to think when you hear all these eyewitnesses come on the show and talk about their encounters where they walked away unscathed that maybe these things aren't dangerous, but they are. You talked about what you found and what apparently happened. I know of incidents where they apparently attacked people unprovoked. You've really done a good service by coming on and sharing the things that you've shared. Like I said before, I really do appreciate it. Having said that, do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Well, all I can say is regarding other people who've had encounters with these things, especially close encounters, consider yourself lucky for the fact that it didn't take a swipe at you. It's pretty obvious that these things around here, anyway, have been pretty doggone aggressive. I mean, come on. One took out my tire, apparently. He tried 2 other times before that. They've been pretty brazen about culling people's cattle. I don't know if there's been any other incidents of any kind of missing persons or anything like that regarding these things, because I tried to find whoever that was, on missing persons and couldn't find them. But maybe, I don't know, maybe it was just too early, or maybe it was, ruled as some kind of a homicide or something, I don't know. But it was pretty evident to me that they were trying to cover something up. And I'm pretty certain that from other things that I've seen that the government's well aware of these things being out there. I mean, come on. The DNR and the Montgomery County Sheriff, saying not to go looking for the source of the howling. And they specifically said howling. It wasn't just, don't go looking for these things. It was, don't go looking for the source of the howling. Like I said, the disappearance of that evidence that we found, and since then, when I've been driving down through there occasionally, during the day, if it was later in the day, you would see where somebody had purposely gone along the sides of the road where there was mud and everything and obliterated tracks and stuff, or areas where there would be tracks, I should say. Areas where fairly well off of the road, like 2-3 feet off of the road, because there's enough room for cars to pass each other on that road without very much problem. Why would they go 3 feet off of the road to be, to try to pass each other? There's a lot more going on with these things than what a lot of people realize, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. There's so much more going on than what most people will ever realize. What's really dangerous is when people get into this, they've been in the field for a little while, and they start to have the impression that they know enough to keep themselves out of dangerous situations or whatnot, when they really don't. There are so many aspects to this that are deeply hidden that unless you've been in it for some time, you just won't learn these facts. And by putting yourself out there in the bush in these situations without knowing certain things like what I'm talking about, you're really taking your chances with your well-being. Well, Adam, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the show tonight. I really appreciate you doing that and sharing all these interesting facts. Thanks so much.
No problem. And if I could say one last thing in closing to other people who are out there trying to study these things, never go alone and never go unarmed. Just common sense. These things are predators.
Well, thanks again so much, Adam. I really do appreciate it. I hope you have a great night.
You too. I'm glad to have been able to hopefully help some people.
Oh, I'm sure you did. Well, thanks again, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye. If you've had a dogman encounter and you'd like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, you can reach me at contact@dogmanencounters.com. I'd love to hear from you. Episode 52. Hello, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host as we listen to eyewitness encounters involving one of the most terrifying cryptids, dogmen. Our guest tonight is Billy. Billy, welcome to Dogman Encounters Radio. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for having me, Vic.
Please give us a brief bio.
Well, I grew up in the South. Spent the majority of my life in the South Mississippi, being exact, on the coast. I'm married, have 3 kids, and after Hurricane Katrina went through us down here, we decided to back up and move north to Wyoming. We spent about, 8 or 9 years there, and some issues come along which forced us back down south. We've been here for the last few years. Decided that the heat's kind of too much, so we're everything's better. I think we're gonna decide to go back up, move back up. I'm a very outdoorsy guy. Anything to do outdoors. I don't stay inside very much. I try to teach my kids the same. That's orient them. There's so many things are technology driven now anymore. Everybody's inside, so we're pretty outside family. Camping, fishing, you name it. Other than that, I'm just a simple guy. There's not really too much to know.
As a kid, did you have any fascination with cryptids like Bigfoot, werewolves, etc.?
I can't remember any. I was, like I said, outdoorsy guy growing up. Little kid, daylight hit, I hit the door, and at dark, my parents had to make me come in. I was whatever I can get in out there. I can't remember a time where I was really into that kind of stuff. TV wasn't my thing, so I didn't keep up with any stuff like that. So I can't say that I was. I wasn't into any of that.
If you had been into Bigfoot and other cryptids like that from an early age, I guess it would be easy for a listener to claim that you had Bigfoot or Dogman on the brain, and that's why you quote-unquote thought you saw one, but since you never were like that, that throws that idea right out the window. Moving on, now that you've had your encounter, what's been the hardest lingering effect to deal with?
Well, I don't look at the woods the same. I'd say you don't just look at the woods as it was and, ooh, that looks like a nice place to go fishing, or ooh, that looks like a nice place to go hunting, or oh, I might take the family over here this weekend, or I move around a lot with my job, so I get to see a lot of country. I mean, I've seen a lot of country, and it's you look at it and say, well, I wonder if there's anything like that dangerous in that area. Oh, well, it looks like that may be something bad in that area, or maybe I should look up and see if there's been any sightings or issues with that kind of thing in this area. I mean, I went from a careless, carefree guy, take the family hiking, let's go to the woods, to the lake, to the river, to the beach, whatever. And now there's that in my mind now. There's a worry of, what would I do if that happens when I got my family with me now? I got my head, my eyes, my ears open on that kind of stuff. Now it's hard not to just relax when you're out there now.
Oh, I can understand that. I can't see how anyone could blame you for feeling that way. In the pre-interview, you mentioned the fact that your job requires you to go into the woods, deep into areas where people don't normally go. I can only imagine the effect your encounter has had on your ability to do that job.
Oh, yes, sir. That's, I'm on call 24/7, and, I get called out anytime. And most of the time when there's a problem, it's going to happen, late at night when everybody's in bed. And I get sent out way in the middle of a swamp or to the woods or somewhere way away, and then every little pop and creek behind you, around you, that's in your head. You get more concentrated. Next thing you know, you find yourself more concentrating and trying to figure out what's going on out there than your job.
Oh, I can imagine. After an encounter, it's bad enough when a person has to go out and take the trash out or go out to the car after dark, but having to head into a swamp after dark or heading way out into the middle of nowhere in the woods even, all by yourself, that would just be horrible, so I feel for you.
Oh, yeah, and that's another thing I take when, if I'm travel around sometimes, and I talk to my family at night, my wife, and, and telling them when they take the trash out at night or whatever they got to do, I'm always worried. Be careful. Please pay attention. Please watch around you. And now, since all that, my wife's become very familiar with guns. My kids have too. And now I make sure that she carries that thing when it calls for it and when she's able to. And I'm always asking, you make sure you got your gun, you got it where you can get to it. Is it loaded? Is it safe away from the kids now? So that's a whole other subject now you got to put in there to worry about is a gun now when you've around your family. So, it changes your life in a big way.
Oh, sure it does. Yeah, when you have an encounter like that, it really does complicate things as if life isn't complicated enough on its own. You talked a little bit with me about the whole dynamic of sharing the encounter with your wife and your kids. Your kids aren't all that much past the age when you were up to your neck with work trying to convince them that they didn't have a monster under their bed. What was it like having to reverse that now and tell your kids about that encounter that you had with what, for lack of a better term, could be called a monster?
Well, that took a long, long talk with my wife. Like I was saying, I had nightmares for the longest times, and they would just like regular nightmares, just wake up and the jerk. No, it was rough. Where I was loud, and it woke my son up. And he's very, very observing. He watches everything that goes on. And he knew something was up. He seen my arm, and he seen what I was going through, and it was eating on him bad and bugging me. So, and when we'd go places, I would have to stay on him about watch this or watch that. Don't go over there. Stay over here where I can see you. Make sure I can see what you're doing. And eventually, they just drilled into me, Dad, what's going on, kind of thing. So, me and my wife got together one night, and we set them all down and told them what was happening, what's going on. And I didn't know what to expect from them. I really didn't. But it was like they just couldn't take it in. There was just silence. There was, well, I'm sorry, Dad, and a hug and whatever. And just you could tell that they just didn't know how to take it. They just didn't know what to do with it. And so, but now they're more conscious to the thing now that when we do go somewhere, it's on their mind now. And I didn't want to ruin their time, but I just want to make them aware of there is stuff like that out there, and you do need to pay attention and don't listen to what the outside tells you. Who cares if they laugh? But whatever, it's true. It's real. You just need to protect yourself. But they took it well. I mean, it's gone good. They don't bring it up. They don't bug me about it. They know what it is. It is what it is, and that's the way it is.
Other than that encounter that you had with that dog man, have you had any other close calls out in the wilderness?
Nothing like that. I've been stranded in the woods before. Like I said, I've spent a lot of time. The majority of my life, especially growing up, was in the woods. But I've been stranded. I'm telling you about that. I got trapped in 3 days in the river in the swamp with nothing but a dog and a boat and a rope that I had to tow upriver. That's my only other thing that ever had happen to me. But nothing like the dog man.
I think you said you had a Doberman that you used to take camping with you, and that's who was stranded with you that time.
Yes, sir. It was a Doberman. See, I had friends, not very many. A few that I had, either their mom was, didn't like them going out in the woods or that far away or fishing or they didn't like doing it. So I was either by myself or, my dog. I had a Doberman Pinscher at the time, and I always went to the river weekends. But I moved out on my 16th birthday. 16th birthday, I bought a little place and I had the dog, and people knew that I was always been the kind of guy that I'll just up and go camping for a little while, for a few days or whatever. I was bad about not telling nobody where I went or things like that. So I was working on a boat, and I was going to test drive it. Took it to the river, and I never go downriver, never. I never go downriver. And that day, I wanted to go check out a specific place that was upriver, because I was wanting to go fishing there the next day or the weekend. So, I was like, you know what? Told my dog, let's just go ahead. It'll be all right. We'll go on down. So we headed downriver, and the reason why I always go upriver is because in case something happened, I can always just float down. So we went downriver that day, check out a spot, and we did. We went down. It was ways down there, and then you had to cut off into the swamp. And I went into the swamp a ways, and then there was a bad, real sharp bend that curved back off the main branch into a spot, and in that bend, the current was really bad. So I pulled in that little bend. Ended up having a problem with my boat. My shear pin broke and my propeller, and I put in gear, and nothing would happen. So it's kind of screwed. It doesn't have anything to fix it. So I had to tie the boat to my waist and jump out into the water. And it's pretty snake infested, gator infested area. So I had to swim, wade, pull myself through trees, swamp while I pulled that boat, that dog. And when it started getting dark, I had to find a little dry area, sandy area, whatever I could climb onto. And we had flipped the boat over on top of us and spend the night. But as long as he was fine and didn't growl, bark, ears perk up, whatever, I was fine. So, you know, I didn't think nothing out there was like that. And there I am, a kid running around, you know, in the dark, in the woods and swamp, and that the people would be scared to death to go into, you know, and it didn't bother me because I didn't think nothing was there, nothing that you didn't already know of. So when I seen that night, that dog man, that changed my world.
Being stranded in the woods would be bad enough, but being stranded in a swamp like that really takes it over the top. Billy, let's get right into your encounter. Please tell us every last detail about that encounter that comes to mind. I want you to start off with the events that led to you being at that location where you had it, and then I want you to end with the first person that you told about that encounter after you got back to safety.
Okay. I was in Wyoming. I lived in a very south part of Wyoming on the border there with Utah. And I had to go to a training session for work in Bozeman, Montana. So I went up there and I spent a few days. And it was May of 2010. I remember this exactly because usually that's wrapping up the end of wintertime in that area. That year, specifically May, we was having some pretty heavy snowstorms. But anyway, I left from Bozeman, Montana, heading back home down south Wyoming. And the snow started picking up, and it was getting heavier and heavier and heavier. I ended up messing up on my route, and I ended up heading right into Yellowstone National Park. And the roads were closed to there at that time of the year. So I ended up having to go find my way around this other route, and I ended up on this road. I'm pretty sure it's called Teton Pass. I tried Google mapping it the other day after I spoke with you, and I'm pretty sure it was Teton Pass, Highway 33 or something like that. Anyway, there's a big pass, a big mountain pass that crosses from Idaho over into Wyoming. And I wasn't sure if I was in the Wyoming side or the Idaho side, but the snow was getting really heavy. And I got on this big mountain pass, and I had a bunch of switchbacks or cutbacks where you go back and forth going up, and then, you know, back and forth or around going down. And I can remember hearing on the radio the alert come on that the pass was closing. And I could see the flashing yellow lights on the sign that they put to close the road behind me when I was going up the mountain. So I was like, wow, I'm the last guy on this pass, on this road. If everybody else, you know, is off and nobody's on, I'm the only one on this stretch of road or this pass. So anyway, I made it to the top, and I remember it was getting so bad, the roads were so slick. I didn't get to the point where I done took my seatbelt off and opened my door of my truck, not all the way open, but I cracked the door because I was waiting for myself to slide off that mountain, off that pass. I was worried pretty much when I was sliding off there. Anyway, I just started down maybe 3 turns going down, and I'm saying 3 turns, I'm not exactly sure, but it was about that long. I seen a whole big bunch of bighorn sheep. I believe that's what they call them, bighorn sheep. I'm from the south. I'm not too familiar with if the bighorn sheep or the mountain goats, one or the other. I'm pretty sure it's a bighorn sheep. Anyway, there was a bunch of them, and they was actually pushing into each other. They was ramming their chest and their necks into each other, like trying to push each other out of the way, like, get out of my way, I need to go, move, move, move. And like they was scared to death. You could see it in their eyes. Their eyes was wide open. They was heading up the mountain. I was going down. They was coming up. And I was like, whoa, that's cool. I've never seen one of them in real life. And I know they're pretty rare to people hunt them down to, you know, climb up mountains, do a lot of hiking and a lot of time just to hunt one of these things down. And now I see a whole herd of them, a whole bunch of them. I was like, wow, that's cool. And I remember it's just getting dark. It's just getting dark. But if you know anything about snow and at nighttime, if there's any kind of anything like that, snow lights everything up pretty bright. So, but it was just getting dark. And I tried to get a picture of them, and I couldn't already make it out. I mean, I just could see the rear end of one of them. So that sucks. But anyway, I made another two coming down, and there it was, another set of them. I mean, they was moving. They was coming up that mountain fast. They was, I mean, I remember coming up on them, and I was trying to stop, and I wasn't going very fast, and I was sliding. And like, oh crap, I'm gonna hit them. I'm gonna hit them because they ain't stopped. They ain't worried about me. They worried about getting the heck out of somewhere. They was moving. They was going. Anyway, there was something else I was seeing that night that I meant to share with you that I kind of put the pieces together later about what I think it could have been. But I seen a baby deer. He was young and a little one. He had spots all over him. And he was out there by the road, and he was looking around. I was looking for Mama deer. She was nowhere around. I was like, wow, well, you know, that's odd to see a baby deer by itself, that young, you know, looking around. I wouldn't say he had spots on him, but he was young. I don't know if he was orphaned or if he was a runt or what, but he was a little bitty deer. And he may have been, didn't need a mom or whatever, but anyway, I don't even know what time they even born up there anyway. I come on down, and I ran into a car. There was a car on the side of the road, and I remember thinking, wow, I'd hate to be stuck up here, broke down. And, well, you know, I was thinking, well, you know, I'm going to check this car out and see if, maybe I can see if their license plates. Maybe if they're local, I'm sure somebody else can help them quicker than I can. If they get a cell phone, you know, I couldn't do much for them. If they're out of town, I want somebody to help me out. A place like this is being stuck out of town. So I'm going to stop, you know. I remember stopping up to there beside them, and I couldn't see their tag. It was packed with snow. It was packed all over it. And I looked in the window, and there was nobody in the car. So I continued on. Well, a little ways on down the road, I noticed there was a big black mass on the right side of the road. And it looked like maybe there was a really large person in a big coat in a ball. But it was really big, and I just couldn't place what it would be. And then I remember worrying, thinking, you know, maybe the owner of that car had gotten out and tried walking down the mountain, and the cold got them, or they slipped in the road. Maybe somebody hit them, or somebody slid into them and hit them, and they kept going and got scared. You know, all that stuff's going through your mind because there wasn't no snow on this black thing. You know, the snow was coming down hard. It was sticking everywhere, and it was, you know, it was odd. So I was like, well, you know, it could be a person. Snow's not sticking. Maybe no body heat, whatever. Maybe it's more than one person, and they balled up under, you know, a blanket or something. That stuff's going through your head. You just can't quite see good. It's snowing pretty hard. It's blowing. Well, I pulled up behind it, fairly close, but not that close. And I opened my door. I got out, and the wind was blowing, and you could hear the wind whipping through the trees. And the snow was so bad it was sticking my eyelashes where I was trying to keep out my eyes. I couldn't see hardly. And then I walked up to it, which I found out when I got close that it was behind it. And I was trying to make out what was going on. And about that time, I heard a bone break, tendon tear, meat rip, or some kind of, you know, crunch or tear. And at that same exact moment in time that I heard that, I noticed I was looking at the back of a wolf head, a very large wolf head that was squatted down, bowed over, and what I was looking at was the back. It was the back of the thing. It was a big black mass. You couldn't really tell what it was like that. You don't expect to see anything living, that big person. Anyway, at the moment I realized what I was looking at, I turned my head to the side to get out of there. I was going to turn and take off. Well, right when I turned, I'd say not turned because I'd be turned, but I'd say as I was turning side, this thing looked over its shoulder at me. So I'm looking at it and it's looking away. It looked over its left shoulder at me. It looked over its left shoulder and it had a look on its face like, kind of like I did. Like, oh, look. And it all happened so fast. It went from oh to rage to blown out, ticked off rage. And you know the sound like a dog would make, or a wolf you'd hear on TV or Discovery Channel, and if they're eating something and another one comes up there and tries to get it, and another one ties into him and snaps and growls and rips, the kind of attack sound they make. It sounded like that, but magnified. Like, I can't tell you how long. It was loud, it was big, and it was deep, and it ripped me. I mean, I could feel it just tore into me. It's kind of, I'm trying to make sure that I won't miss anything, and it's kind of hard to relive through this. But as I turned, this thing did that, and I could see it lunged. It lunged, made a lunge motion towards me, and the look on its face was, I got you, ticked off. Nose was wrinkled up, eyes was squinched down. He had his really long pointed ears on top of his head, really long. He was jet black. His eyes was like a mix of like a yellow, little tint of orange, like an amber color, and it wasn't like he was looking right at me. It was like he was looking through me. He had me. I was nothing. I was prey. And you get that sense of feeling what a deer would feel like if somebody was hunting it, or like being the prey, should I say? You know, like it's helpless. You got no control of the situation anymore. So I had to collect myself here for a second.
Sure, take your time.
Okay. Anyway, now as I turn to run. I take off and I slip on ice and I slide. Well, as that happens, I feel pressure on my left arm. I feel like a frog almost, like a dead leg, like somebody punches you a muscle and it cramps it. I didn't think much of it. You know, I just felt like, these things running through my head's just racing at this point in time. Anyway, I slid. I hit the front of my truck. My head went down on the hood of my truck. And what went through my head was, it's over. It's done. I waited any second for, it's going to be over. It's done. It's over. He got me. I just waited for that feel of teeth sinking into my head, my neck, clawed hand grabbing into your back of your head, being jerked up, torn to pieces. Just kind of waited any second. I knew it. I just over. My family went to my head of, oh God, what are they going to do now? How are they going to take this? Well, it's crazy to think. But anyway, I sat there for a second and realized nothing's happened. So I peeked back over my shoulder and looked, and he's not there. Well, I can see that where he was. I can see a big pile of blood on the road, and I see a big drag mark down the hill to the woods, and I seen him. He had this car some kind on his arm, his left arm. And he's heading back to the woods. He's pushing it into the woods. He took his right hand up and he pushed into the woods. His right hand, and he just, it was, this dude was huge. I mean, I just couldn't believe this was happening. And at the whole time, I was thinking, holy crap, it's a werewolf. You know, it's real. You know, how is this happening? And I would say 7 foot plus height, 4 foot wide shoulders, smaller waist, jet black, coarse hair, not very long, but not real short. I can remember when he lunged at me, I can remember seeing his chest, a chest muscle, like pecs and shoulder muscles, and like I seen the color of his skin, like a blue grayish leather look. He had hands that looked like hands. He looked like it had like a mitt, like a paw on his palm. You know, if that makes sense, like a dog paw on the palm of his hand, but fingers long, hard, fingers big, black, long claws, but like dog's toe pad on the bottom. But as he was walking away, I noticed his legs. He had massive thighs. Upper thighs was huge. When it got down to like where a knee would be, he kind of bowed right there, and it looked like he was standing on his toes, and his heels would be really, really high up on the back of his leg. Like, kind of like you could say like a werewolf in a movie, kind of squatted down, halfway squat, walking on his toes, with really long feet, but his heels would be up on the back of his leg kind of look, if that makes sense. So I'm explaining that right. Kind of like a dog's leg, mixed a man's leg with a dog's leg. He had a thigh, but he had that lower backward bend in his legs and his toes. He pushed his way on himself onto the woods, carrying whatever he had with him. And that's when I come back to reality of what I need to do. I took off. I tried to jump in my truck. I was sliding around all over the place. I jumped in my truck, tried taking off, and I was spinning, sliding all over the ice. And I was freaked out, thinking, holy crap, man, come on, we got to go. I'm scared, get the hell out of here. I need to go. And I couldn't. I remember it was irritating and scary at the same time that I couldn't get out of there fast enough because I was on this ice, sliding all over the place. So, anyway, I get a little ways down the road, and the shock and the adrenaline is starting to wear off, and I feel this pulsating, a little bit of pain in my left arm, and I feel this tickle, like a tickle, something on my elbow, like a little weird tickle feeling on the tip of my elbow. And I got stopped. I guess I'm off the pass by now. I got off the mountain pass. I'm on a flat road, and the snow's wearing off, and I get myself stopped. I look at my arm. I turn around, the light on the side of my truck, and I realize that the arm of my sweater is shredded. I mean, it's ripped. It's ripped the heck back. Good. There's 4 good, distinct rips through the forearm of my sweater. And I can see blood through there, so I get my sweater pulled off there, and my arm is shredded 4 spots. I got 4 shred marks on my arm. 2 big ones on the outsides, and then 2 shorter, smaller ones in the middle. And at the top of the middle claws, he took a chunk with him, like it was like a rip a chunk of whatever piece of meat I'm on come with it, ripped it off, and then straight, sharp claw marks on the side. On the bottom side of my forearm was bruised pretty bad. It was like I couldn't tell if it was a squeeze or a thumb or if a bite. Bottom side of the jaw squeeze or what, but it was pretty wide. I know you were saying, you was talking tonight. It was probably too wide to be his mouth, I'm not sure to say how wide his mouth was. It was pretty wide, but not big, thick wide. He had a long muzzle, about 5.5 inches long. He had sharp fangs, canine fangs that looked like they was not on the side. It was on the side, but not completely on the side. It was rolled up more like on a human version of their eye teeth. And he had bottom the same way. And his teeth in the front and the bottom was sharp, and they was on the sides back, like his molars were sharp on the outside edges, like they was folded and bent, like kind of angled inside towards his tongue, towards the center of his mouth, and sharp on the outside and curved up on the inside. It's kind of hard to explain that, but it looked like the dude just walked straight out of a horror movie, comic book or something. You'd see on TV. I don't watch much movies at the time I was growing up and stuff. So, I do know that I've seen some movies that this dude looked like it would come out of. It was. Anyway, I'll get tied up in the whole mess of that thing. It just freaked me out. Anyway, I took out my arm, and I'm bleeding pretty bad. He ripped it pretty good. So I took my shirt on off, and I wrapped my arm, and I get it wrapped up, and I actually wrapped the piece of shirt I had around my arm, and I had some duct tape, like I always kept inside my seat. I always keep duct tape with me, and wrapped it up. And I had my suitcase with me. I grabbed another shirt, another sweater, put it on. I wasn't going to tell my wife about it, because I'm bad about, I still think there's, a lot of good people left out there, and I'll see somebody broke down or walking, I'll stop, check on them, help them out, give them a ride, whatever. And my wife always gets on to me about that. She's like, you're going to do that one day, and somebody's, going to get into something you ain't going to like, or it's going to be a bad situation, or bad guy, or whatnot. So I wasn't going to tell her. I was going to hide it, so I got that put on. Anyway, I can't remember the rest of the way home. It's a blur, to tell you the truth. It was, I think my mind was off somewhere else. I couldn't process this thing. Anyway, I got home. I hit it pretty good. I hit it for a while, about a week. Or I say about 5 days, 1 to 5 days. Nightmares just getting bad, sweat. And then my wife found my shirt. I didn't hit it too good. She found the sweater that was ripped. The rips in it, shreds. And I had to tell her what happened. I told her what happened. She didn't doubt me at all. She said, I know there's something out there. I can't say what, but I was sure, there's, I don't doubt when people say they've seen something, and me being her husband, she didn't doubt me one bit. But she did tear into my butt for stopping and told me that, I better not stop my butt again for nothing like that ever again. But anyway, the sweater I had on was like a thick wool. It was really thick, like they call it, I can't remember what they call it. I can't remember, but it's really thick, really, really hard, dense, packed sweater. And I was like, man, this thing had to have some razors to rip this, because it was shredded. Well, I'm not line. I'm not exaggerating at all when I say we took that sweater and pulled it tight. I took a razor and swiped at it real hard, pushed it down, ripped it, cut into it, and it wouldn't cut through all the way. On that first swipe, it took a couple swipes. So whatever it used, whatever it hit me with, was razor sharp. It was sharp enough to cut through the sweater, no problem, all the way through, and down a long ways, and through me a good bit, and take a piece of meat with it. So, I'm pretty sure it was a hand, a claw that took a swipe at me, because, I mean, it was sharp, and you could actually see on, especially on the outside two swipes, the cuts, it looked like a triangle started, like an A, like, the point of them is just one little point, but as they come down, two lines kind of separate, like he was, like kind of an open dog's toenail on the bottom. If you see what I'm saying? Like if you look at the bottom of a dog's toenail, how they got an opening in the toenail, a cup, you know what I mean? Like the point to the back is kind of an A shape, triangle. It's kind of like that on the two outside ones, but they was close together, and it was real sharp, a real sharp cut. But that's pretty much how it got to where the first person I told, the only person I told besides my wife and my kids, and now you.
You said your wife gave you a lot of trouble for stopping to try and help someone on the side of the road, but you never did say what her reaction was when you told her what had happened that day, or that night, I should say. How did she react, and what did she say?
Well, I'm saying she didn't doubt me. She gave it how do you say it? Took a breath. She looked at me, and she just waited for the punch. She just stared at me like all right, Billy, come on, give me something here. This ain't time for jokes. You know, kind of thing. And it kind of embarrassed me, and I kind of felt regret of saying anything. And, you know, I know I felt myself turn red, aggravated, and all, so I kind of sat down, and she's like, well, wait a minute, you serious? I said, yes, ma'am, I'm dead serious. Yes. And it was an oh my God moment. She cried. She didn't know she didn't know what to say. She told me I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say with something like this. This is something that don't exist and don't happen. And you hear about things, but you never think it really be true. And then your husband comes home with it. You know, how do you take it? How do you say? What do you say? What prepares you for a moment like that? She kind of put it out there. That's what she gave me. That's how she acted.
I am glad knowing that you had someone right there that you could share the details of that encounter with. The fact that your wife is always there to bounce things off of and hopefully help you get better. A lot of these people that I talk to, they've got no one to share the details of their experiences with, and as a result, it takes them a lot longer to bounce back to good. So that is, like I told you in the pre-interview, a really good thing there. Now I want to go over some things about that actual encounter. When it turned around and looked at you there, Billy, how close were you to it, and what went through your mind the moment you saw its face?
Well, I thinking about it, I'm not sure exactly how close. I wasn't standing right on top of him. I was a few paces behind him. But in my mind, I'm right. It's right in my face. I'm standing right behind him, right on top of him. But I was a few paces behind him, so I was halfway between my truck and him. And I know people would say, well, how didn't he hear you? How, bull crap, you can't pull up a light. Well, you know, the snow was, it was blowing pretty hard. The wind was kicking real thick. My truck was silent. And when you're driving on snow, you know, and you're driving that slow, you could sneak up on something, you know, and the echo in the mountains, I'm guessing. But he was into whatever he was doing. I mean, he was into eating whatever he was into, man. He is like, you know, I surprised him just as much as it surprised me. But when he kind of turned over, and the look at first to me was like, I thought that whatever this is, it's going to break and run. He's going to haul butt, just like I am. Because the look on his face and his eye was, what the heck, you know? Like I called him with his pants down kind of look. Eyes was wide. And like he actually caught a breath, like he, for a second. But it flipped so fast. It went from, you made a mistake, buddy, kind of look like you just screwed up. It's over for you. And he turned from O to pissed and 0.0 flat. I mean, the dude was on me.
Do you have any idea when those tears happened?
Well, I know when I can remember when I felt it. I turned to get out of there. He turns to look at me. And so as I'm turning my head and I realize he noticed me, I kind of stopped from turning to the right, you know. And when then he flipped his switch to mad, I turned to take off. And I'm a good ways away from him by then. I mean, I'm a good hop, skip, and a jump, then a step away at that moment. And I turned to take off, I mean, hard. And as soon as I turn away, my arm is still kind of behind me a little bit to take off. And right at that moment, I feel it. Whop, a punch. So that dude was able to move, get up, close that gap, and hit me before I even had a chance to really take off.
So that the listeners know, Billy sent me some pictures of those rips in his arm. I'm going to post those on the YouTube version of the show so you can take a look at them and see for yourself exactly what happened there. And speaking of those pics, Billy, when did you take those photos of your arm? Was it about a week after the fact or what?
Yeah, it was about a week and a half after, 2 weeks after it happened. So it had been healing a while, but they was deep enough to where it took them a while. You know, I heal really quick. I eat really good. I'm a natural, you know, well, I used to be. But I've always, you know, ate real well. I've always been really healthy, real active, and I've always healed really well and really fast. But it took that a while to heal. You know, usually a week and a half. A cut, even a cut that requires stitches for me, is closed up good. But a week and a half after that swipe, it's still closing up. It don't look that bad, but compared to a week and a half before that moment, they look really, really, really good.
I know you didn't just let them heal up on their own after you got home or got to wherever you were going. You cleaned them up really good. How deep were those rips in your arm?
They were, I can't say the measurements, but they went through the meat. They were, pinky nail deep, probably, almost, by my pinky nail.
That's pretty deep.
They were, I can remember cleaning them up. I took my fingernail and was pulling dirt and stuff out of them. I was like scraping inside of them out. So they was about half of about a pinky nail, 3/4 of a pinky nail dip inside of my arm. They were pretty good. I mean, it was in the meat, real good.
One thing about that whole chain of events I just can't figure out is the bruising that we talked about that was on the underside of your forearm there. It makes me wonder if maybe that was a bite somehow, but if it was, those bottom teeth would have cut into your arm just like the top ones did. So it just doesn't make sense to me where that bruising came from unless maybe its thumb was on the underside and then its four other fingers raked into you somehow on the top.
That's the only thing I can come up with, because it felt like at the time, I'm thinking maybe because my adrenaline was up or what, but it felt like a frog. Not, well, I say frog down where I'm from, we call it a frog, like dead leg. When you get hit, somebody punches you in the muscle and it balls up in a knot, it cramps. Kind of feels like that, like a just pressure, just like somebody hit me real hard in the arm. Maybe he like reached out for me to grab me, or maybe just swung at me. Maybe the bruising just from the impact. I don't know, but the underside of my forearm, the opposite side, was bruised, and it wasn't like a defined spot like where teeth would maybe be or thumb. But I'm no doctor, so I'm not sure. I wish I could have seen, but I don't know what it was. His hand, his mouth, or what.
Well, the fact that you didn't feel it when it was happening is totally understandable. I mean, your adrenaline valve had to be cranked wide open at that moment, so that's not surprising that you didn't feel the pain right then. Before you got close to it, was there ever a moment where your intuition told you something wasn't right?
Well, I felt that. I felt like, because I just couldn't place what this could be, but it was snowing so hard. The only thing that could go through my head was, that car back there on the side of the road. Somebody could need some serious help. So that kept pushing everything else out of my mind. That somebody could be in trouble. Somebody could be in trouble. So I just kept, somebody's balled up under a blanket. Two people maybe up under something. Maybe if a guy bowed over on his hands and knees, or with his thing. I just couldn't place it. It didn't feel right. It didn't look right. It didn't look right at all because I couldn't place what it was. But the thought of somebody being in trouble kept pushing everything else out of my mind.
You're an awfully good man. Unfortunately, that benevolence you've got, it puts you in a very unfortunate circumstance, and I really hate to see that. That's not right. How big was this animal that it was eating? Did it look like it was big enough to be, say, a Dall sheep, or bigger yet, like an elk, or what?
I would say not as big as an elk. No, it was big, maybe deer size, a young mule deer size, good and healthy. It was big, whatever it had, and I couldn't tell if it was part of this thing that he had or all of it, but he could bear over top of it and had it hid. He was a big dude, but squatting down that way, it was like he had his thighs bent, like he was squatting like a person would. Kind of like if he had knees, like they would be in front of him to his chest, and his shoulders folded over. Because like I said, I couldn't see anything other than the top half back of this thing. The snow was deep, built up on sides, so I don't know if he was like partially buried in snow, been over on this thing or what. But the only thing I was looking at was like the waist, back, shoulders, that spot. So he was hiding whatever he had completely until he got up and headed to the woods with it under his arm.
Changing topics here a little bit here, Billy. Understandably so, you've been having big problems with nightmares after that encounter. Tell us about those nightmares if you don't mind.
Well, every nightmare pretty much that I've had involving this thing is just, at first they was constant, almost every night, but they would be just a black, just staring into black nothing. And then all of a sudden this thing is in my face. It's in my face and it's making that loud screeching. I don't even know what you would call that. A high, like a screeching, barking roar. You know, like a dinosaur. I don't know, but that noise just right in my face. I mean, and I would get that feeling again, like being prey, like being helpless, like being in an airplane that's going down, like being in the middle of an ocean and a shark trying to grab you by your legs. Is the best way I can explain that feeling. And then I'd wake up in a swinging panic. Sometimes I'd wake up flailing, throwing fists, throwing arms, throwing elbows, hollering, you know, running. I could still see it for a while. I could see it in the dark in the corner. And, you know, that making you pray, being from the top of the food chain to just stepping down off the food chain. It does to you, you know. You get that. Predators have that thing they put off that sends that bolt of scare to a prey, and it makes them run. And when they run, the prey runs. And when the prey runs, they know, okay, that's prey. It's running to go after it, you know. And when it does that same thing to you, when you feel that, feeling it, you know, oh God, it's hard to. Just can't put that words to paper of what that feeling is. But the nightmares, you know, I'm talking about actual wake up and then have to change my clothes and my shirt because the sweat is so bad, kind of thing.
If it's of any comfort, a lot of people that I've spoken with who have seen these things go through the same kind of thing almost every night. In time, it should get better, especially after our talk. You said you were already feeling better about the situation, but having said that, are the nightmares the worst part of this, or what you have to go through during the day?
Well, at first it was the nightmares. They got better. And like I said, when my wife knew, and it got a little better. And once the kids knew, it took another step. And actually, when I said, like I was saying, I felt after you, it felt another big step. You know, just I can physically feel it distant. But when you go in somewhere, when you want to take your son out hunting or walking, then now you know there's that obstacle. Now there's that worry that's taking most of your attention away from what you want it to be on. That is I wouldn't say like the toughest, the most aggravating thing about it now.
Yeah, it's not fair when you have something like that happen to you that takes all the fun away, the things that you used to love to do out in the wilds. Now you can't do, or you can do, but it's just not the same because now you're worried about running into another one of these things. It's just not right. You said you did some research into this dogman topic, especially about the areas that you go into. Did you wind up ever finding out about any encounters that did happen in the areas that you go into?
The areas I go into, well, it was up north at the time, I couldn't find anything about anything that looked like a werewolf at the time. There was Bigfoot, you know, encounters and stories everywhere in that north area, but nothing about what I seen. But when I looked closer to my original home, where I'm from, down south, I read a lot about encounters, people having them down there. I found out that not far from where I lived, there's a place called Buzzard Roost, Mississippi, where people seize these things, and then they call them bush devils. Apparently, everybody that lives out there, it's like a really off the grid, off the map kind of place. It's by the river. It's nothing but woods. Hardly nobody goes out there, and it's a few people live out in that area, but the people that live out there is the kind that live hard. They don't go into town shopping. They don't have electricity. They don't have running water, nothing like that. So they're really big time country folk that live out in that area and you don't really think about it. But I found out that out there they see these things. It's not exactly what I've seen, but close. They call them bush devils. But I found that really interesting. But other than that, nothing where I was. I'm sure there had to be something other than me in that area, but I couldn't find anything around that area where I was, where I lived, about anybody seeing anything like this.
Well, that's really good news. I sure hope that was the first and last encounter you have to ever worry about dealing with. Do you have any closing comments you'd like to share, Billy?
Well, I'd like to say, like people out there that has had this issue or has seen something like this, I know it's hard on that, thinking about facing the ridicule that there is out there that you're going to receive from this, but trust me, I mean, you share it, it'll get better. Spit it out to somebody. Find somebody to tell. It will do you good. These things are out there. People that, listen to this and haven't had an encounter or, are objective to this kind of thing or whatever, they're there. Just watch yourself because it's there. They are. I mean, this, like the fact is a fact. Just like you were saying about you can go down in the rainforest and find a tribe and tell somebody, I drove here in my car. They'd laugh you out of there. What's a car? They never seen nothing. They never seen a car. They don't even know what that is, But who's the dummy? They are. Cars are real, but they don't know that. Just like this. I'm telling you, they are real. It's better to be prepared for it than have a moment like I had and it ruin your day, then your week, then your year, and then the time you want to spend with your family. So that's pretty much all I can say about it.
Well, Billy, as I found out really quickly in the pre-interview, this is not an easy subject for you to talk about. I can't thank you enough for agreeing to come on and share the encounter and all the other details with the listeners. I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate it, Vic. Thank you for that. Thank you for the time and listening and giving me, the opportunity to share my story and, helping me with the out. I truly do. I mean, as soon as I get through the story part, the actual event that happened, I feel better. I mean, it's like a big weight just pulled right on my chest and just like I can breathe. I got it out there now. I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. You're giving people a way to get this out, get it off of them, and make people aware of what's out there.
Oh, you're welcome. And like I told you before, if at any time you think talking about this again would do you some good, please do let me know, because I'll always be here. I'd be glad to help. Well, thanks again so much for coming on, Billy. I hope you have a great night.
You too, bud. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you. We'll see you.
Bye.
Bye. If you've had a dogman encounter and you'd like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, you can reach me at contact@dogmanencounters.com. I'd love to hear from you.